Thank you, Madam President. I can tell you it's bittersweet to be here today. As we sometimes say back home, I've got some good news, I've got some bad news. On the good news side, we're here today to confirm Attorney General Scott Pruitt to be the next administrator of the EPA. While he should have been passed through the Senate weeks ago, we're here now, we're here today, we're going to get it done in a couple hours. That's good news. As I say about Montana, we are a unique blend of Merle Haggard and John Denver. And mastering that melody is always a challenge. But when you do, it results in a common sense approach to environmental stewardship. And I can tell you, Scott Pruitt's the guy to do it. I just literally left my office to come down and make these remarks. And guess who I was meeting with in my office? With Scott Pruitt. You know what we talked about? He came into my office, and when you come into my office, you're going to see Montana all over the walls. You're going to see me with a fly rod in my hand. You're going to see pictures of trout that we've caught and released back in the streams and rivers of our state. We talked about fly fishing in Yellowstone Park. He loves to fly fish. In fact, he asked me, do you know where Cook City, Montana is? I said, Scott, Cook City, Montana, let me show you. I've got a map of the Beartooths there in my office with pins at all the lakes that I've been to. In fact, I spent 65 miles in the Beartooth Wilderness in August on horseback and on foot, above 10,000 feet, with an elk hair caddis, my fly rod, chasing golden trout and cutthroat trout. We spent a lot of time talking about that. We talked about elk hunting and deer hunting in Montana. Scott Pruitt understands the important role that states play, especially in a state like Montana. I'm confident he's going to restore this balanced focus, this Merle Haggard and John Denver balance that Montanans are pleading for. He'll bring that back to the EPA rather than this heavy-handed, Gina McCarthy, out-of-touch federal approach. Let me tell you a couple of stories of what's going on in Montana and why Scott Pruitt is exactly the right guy for the job. Today in the small town of Colstrip, Montana, they face a real struggle to survive. Colstrip is a generating station and neighboring mine and the lifeblood of this small town. Over the years, the Colstrip plant has continued to develop. They've adopted new technologies and they've made remarkable reductions in emissions and pollution. Yet it's been met with an onslaught of new environmental regulations that are having drastic compliance costs on our state. Let me share some of those. This EPA power plan that was launched by Gina McCarthy. Under the EPA power plan, Montana needs to cut its emissions by 47%, the largest reduction in the nation, leading almost inevitably to the entire shutdown of Colstrip. In fact, according to a study conducted by the University of Montana, they said this plan will cost our state 7,000 jobs, $500 million lost revenues, $1.5 billion in gross sales for our state. And Montana moves from being an energy exporter to being an energy importer. That is outrageous, and the people of Montana know it. For what? For what the Obama administration had projected to have a 0.02 degree impact on global temperature in the next 100 years. Negligible. In fact, I confronted Gina McCarthy on that in a hearing. She did not refute my data. Similarly, the waters of the U.S. serves as yet another example of the detrimental effects of Gina McCarthy's and President Obama's EPA that has harmed Montana's farmers and ranchers. As I mentioned, one of my favorite things to do is get into the fresh air of Montana, the clean waters of Montana, up in wilderness country with my fly rod in my hand. We all want clean water. We all want clean air. I've yet to meet a single Montanan that says, I don't want clean air, I don't want clean water. But the WOTUS rule was a clear effort by the Obama administration to gain control over Montana's livelihoods. It was a private property taking, seeking to regulate virtually every ditch and pond that could be occasionally wet across the state of Montana. And while thankfully this incredible overreach by the EPA and the Obama administration has been stopped by the courts, I'm looking forward to working with Scott Pruitt to defend Montana farmers and ranchers, to defend Montana property owners from this unnecessary and harmful rule. Because Scott Pruitt, he He understands the important role that our states play and not to levy unnecessary and overreaching federal regulations. Regulations that could decimate a state's economy. That is unacceptable. I'll tell you what else I talked to Scott Pruitt about. That's the importance of cleaning up our Superfund sites. This is a critical responsibility of the EPA. We need to unleash American innovation, American cooperation, not cut off affordable energy sources at its heels. Regarding Superfund cleanup, Scott and I, as we concluded our meeting, talked about the Berkeley pit in Butte. He has committed to getting that environmental disaster cleaned up. He assured me he will address these issues head on. It's the largest Superfund site in the United States is right there in Butte, Montana. We had snow geese that came across our state migrating. They landed in the toxic waters in the Berkeley pit, and thousands of snow geese died just by landing in the water. Scott is committed to getting that fixed. It's been on the list for over 20 years. It's time to fix it, and Scott is committed, saying, let's get this done. That's why he's going to be a great administrator to protect the environment in Montana. So that's the good news. We're going to move Scott Pruitt through today, and I'm looking forward to casting a yes vote as our next administrator of the EPA.